Blog Talk Radio. I'm your host, Candace Craw-Goldman. This program was created to assist humans in this rapidly changing world, and its foundation is based upon the late, great Dolores Cannon's work. So thank you, Dolores, for continuing to be here with us. And also thanks to Greg Prescott and Michelle Walling at m5d.com for making this show possible. With humanity's new understanding and acceptance of the quantum world and the role that consciousness plays in shaping both our individual and our collective reality, we have plenty of subject material. I am a full-time practitioner of Dolores' hypnosis method and had the honor and privilege of working with her and alongside of her for several years. You can find out more about my practice of QHHT and my consulting and coaching services at newearthjourney.com. And you can also contact me about a brand new session and process I'm offering remotely. Call or email about how we can create your own unique quantum healing process. And lastly, before we get started tonight, for those of you looking for a practitioner of Dolores' method of QHHT, you may find a wonderful photo listing of the people around the world who are practicing at DoloresCannonQHHT.com. That's DoloresCannonQHHT.com. Also, if you would like to participate live on the show tonight, you can either join us in the chat room or you can call this phone number in the United States, 646-716-8890. That's 646-716-8890. And I believe that number works for our Canadian friends as well. And we're going to try to answer as many of those calls as possible. Tonight is December 11th. 2015. And this is going to be a very fun show. I have known my friend Jeroen, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, Jeroen. He says to use your uvula when you say that. So although I have read that name for many years, I'm still practicing saying it. Wonderful name. Jeroen De Wit for more than 7 years. We haven't had the pleasure of being in the same room at the same time, but maybe someday that'll happen. He's one of the kindest and most heart-loving people I've ever known and a wonderful QHHT practitioner. His strange-looking and sounding name is actually a very common name in his country of origin, the Netherlands. And this is where he started his journey in exploring consciousness when he was first introduced in 1997 to a meditation technique developed by gifted psychic Reva LaRue. And it opened him up to different layers of his being and helped him manage his energy and be more grounded in his body and on our beautiful earth. He continued his exploration of consciousness, and that led him to study dance and bioenergetics. And he earned a BA in art therapy and MA in spiritual psychology. He's also certified Reiki and, of course, quantum healing, hypnosis, therapy practitioner. He does EMF balancing, and he's also a quantum touch practitioner. Hey, so am I. Jeroen studied with Dolores Cannon in 2006, which is actually even before I did. And he has since regressed hundreds of people. And he now teaches energy medicine tools and processes for empowerment and facilitates past life exploration and meditation, and leads meditation groups throughout the Los Angeles area. And he has over 3,000 hours of experience studying healing and therapeutic techniques, doing therapeutic work with individuals and groups in the Los Angeles area. And today's show is going to focus on a very special session that Jeroen and I think he had sometimes in early 2014. But before we start talking about that, I would like to say welcome to my dear friend. Hello, Jeroen.
Hi, I'm here. How are you? I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Now, you ran yourself down to a Starbucks to get a good signal. Is that what you did?
I did. Yeah, we just had some technical difficulties, and hopefully the sound is coming in clear. I can hear you fine right now. How about? Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well, and I'm very glad that we chose this way to connect, because this is the best sounding audio that we've tried. So welcome, and sit back and get ready to chat about all of these amazing things that we're going to talk about tonight. And we're going to talk about this amazing session that you had with a lady named Cathy Byrd about her son claiming to be baseball player Lou Gehrig, and we're going to talk about that here shortly. But actually, I'd just like to start a little bit by you telling our audience how you got started in all of this, how you learned about Dolores, where you studied with her, etc. Will you give us a little background, please?
Sure, I'd love to. First of all, thank you for that introduction you just gave me. That was very kind. I'm so excited to be on the show. So I'm from the Netherlands. Maybe you can detect a little accent. I've been in the States since 2007, and I studied with Dolores back in 2006. I found her because I'd say as a kid I was always looking for, the unseen, the magic behind the physical world. I had this sense that there was more to life than, just the physical world reality that I was seeing around me. And so I was always interested in the metaphysical, and I remember reading a book about out-of-body experiences when I was like 8 years old, and it really sparked my interest. I thought, okay, this man is onto something. I think his name was Nelson Monroe of the Monroe Institute that wrote that book. And so I think it was in 2006, I was visiting a friend, and he had some books laying around. And at that time, I wasn't reading as much because I was in school, and I had to read for school a lot, so I wasn't reading, just for leisure. But I picked up this book that looked interesting, and it had it said Custodians, and it had this picture of an alien on it, and the name said Dolores Cannon. I'd never heard of her before that, so I started reading, and, she has a little introduction about what she does, and my interest was sparked. I was just locked on target. I just devoured the whole book. It made so much sense to me, and I was like, oh my God, finally, a book that describes experiences of worlds that I've, thought of or that I hoped would exist. And this is somebody who sort of reports from those realms. I was so interested. So I think I started reading more of her books, and then I looked up her website, and lo and behold, she was going to come to the Netherlands that year, 2006. At that time, you had to be a hypnotherapist in order to take her course. But when I called in, they had just sort of changed the requirements that you just had to have experience in working with people for about a year prior to taking her class. And I was currently training to be an art therapist, and I had done therapeutic work for people already, so I was good to go. So she came to the Netherlands in The Hague in 2006. And so I took the class, and I was just mesmerized by, the knowledge that she had and the stories that she would tell. It was just really, I don't know, I just felt the energy that she just brought with her, and it was just, I was just magnetized. I was attracted to it. It was so interesting, and I couldn't wait to start practicing after the course. And first, my friends volunteered, and then I started working professionally and doing sessions on people.
How many people were in that class in 2006? And would you tell just a little bit about kind of where it was and what that was like? Was there a translator? Give us a little flavor of what that was like.
Okay, so I was in The Hague in a little room above an international bookstore, and there wasn't a translator. I think it was mentioned that the class was going to be in English, and so I remember there was a guy from Norway, and there was a woman from France. So it was a bit of an international mix of people. So the language was English, and I think there were about 12 of us. I don't quite remember. It was a bit of a rowdy class. There was a lot of, talking, and people were talking amongst each other. And when I met Dolores back in 2009, when I did level 2 in Burbank, she remembered that class, and she was concerned because she thought nobody got the information since there was so much talking going on. But yeah, I did get it. Yeah. So yeah.
That's really interesting. Dolores always had a kind of a quirk about her that it was hard for her, especially with, her hearing. It was a little hard for her sometimes to make out people when they had a bit of an accent. Did you find that to be the case at that time?
I was wondering about that because I remember looking at her while the cross-talking was going on, and she, you probably know her expressions a little bit better, but I thought she looked perturbed at certain times. She had that sort of raised eyebrow, what's going on here, So, yeah. I remember that. Yeah, and sometimes she did not understand the questions because the accent was a little thick. Yeah.
Yeah.
And people would have to repeat themselves.
Well, thank you for giving us a little bit of background about how you found out about Dolores. And, I have to say that the way that you describe that about your reaction picking up her books, most of us as practitioners feel that way, and many, many of her clients and our own clients who come to see us have that reaction. They pick up her books or listen to her on YouTube, and it's that exact same thing. It's like finally yes. Somebody kind of has brought it all together, and it makes some sense internally. There's a connection and a sense inside of us that what she's speaking is important and about as close to the truth as anything that's ever been talked about or written, etc. So thanks for that. But let's jump right into the amazing story. And by the way, I do see Cathy on the line, so Cathy, we'll get to you here pretty quick. Thank you so much for holding. I want to give Jeroen a chance to kind of tell us how this all started. How did you meet Cathy? What was it like when you first started talking to her? And kind of give us some background about this amazing session about, Lou Gehrig that you're going to tell us about. How did it all start?
Sure. So she was referred to me by a friend of hers that had done a session with me. And so she called me, and we talked on the phone, and she started telling me about her son, who started telling her when he was, I think, only 3 years old, that he used to be a tall German baseball player. And she was raised in church, and she had no context for reincarnation, a past life. She had no idea. So at first she told me that she tried to correct his grammar, saying, "Oh, you want to be a tall baseball player?" And
German.
and German, yeah, a little off, right? But yeah, where did he get that information? So I think more and more details sort of spilled out this little kid that, it was so detailed. And, a 3-year-old doesn't go to the computer and starts Googling, he doesn't know how to use, type in words and stuff. So all these details started spilling out. So she was, I think she was a little alarmed in the beginning, like, what is going on with my kid? And so she had taken him to her pastor in church, and the pastor, the poor guy, didn't know what to do with it. He told her to get an exorcism, actually. He thought this little boy was, the little boy was demon-possessed is what he thought. So she said, hold up, just let me try something else first. And so she was kind of forced to look outside of her known, her known environment. And at one point, she found out about past life regression. And at that time, her kid started telling her so many details that what he was telling her, it pointed towards that he had a life as the baseball player Lou Gehrig, because he was talking about his friend Babe Ruth and that they had a fallout. So, she knew about that name, and she's a very avid researcher, so she kind of put one and one together. So finally, she was ready to come see me. So she made the appointment, and she came in, and that's when the amazing story, unfolded.
Well, I guess that probably brings us right to where we should welcome Cathy to the show. So I'm going to unmute your microphone right now, Cathy, and welcome you to Quantum Healing with Candace. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Candace, and thank you, Jeroen, for having me.
It's so wonderful that you are coming forth with your name and this story. So many other people have some similar stories, and they stay very much hidden underground because of backlash or worry about how other people will, take the kind of, presentation of these ideas. And I just want to commend you and honor you for, talking about what's actually happening in your life. It's quite brave of you, and it makes, in my opinion, it makes the world a much better place. So I just want to start off by thanking you so much.
Oh, thank you for that. This did take me about, how long has it been? At least 3.5 years to really decide to share this with the world.
Well, I
quite
can
a journey.
See why.
Yeah,
I certainly
it has been.
See why.
Yeah.
Well, what is your, how would you like to expand on what Jeroen already told us? Is there anything that you would like to talk about, like, what was going on through your mind and what other people saw and what they said and all of that?
Yeah, what I can do is I'll give you a quick rundown on how, this came to our attention. We had a little boy who was obsessed with baseball, like since the age of 2, and he was born into a family with no affinity for baseball. In fact, his father is German and never played before, so we were a little bit confused by it from the very beginning. I took a video of him when he was 2 years old and put it on YouTube, and a couple weeks later we got an email from Adam Sandler saying that they were desperately searching for this kid to be in a movie, and it was the movie That's My Boy. And a couple weeks later, we ended up on an airplane to Boston, where we filmed the movie, and he had a baseball-playing cameo role in the movie. And he just had this this aptitude for baseball that was very uncharacteristic of a 2-year-old. And what they did in the movie, they digitized him, and they made him look better than the adults and made it funny that he was so young. And while we were in Boston, I took him to a baseball game. It was his second baseball game that he'd ever been to, and he'd never watched baseball on television. And it happened to be at Fenway Park, which is the big baseball stadium in Boston. Yeah, which is a big one. And it was the Yankees playing the Red Sox. And he had been to one Dodger game before that. So he sees a big picture of Babe Ruth on the wall, and he got very, very upset. and said, "Mommy, I don't like him. He was mean to me." And it was strange, like, to see your toddler, having a fit over this big poster. But he was so upset by it that we actually had to leave the stadium. I had bought these tickets that were like $300, and we didn't even get to really watch the game because he was so worked up about this. So this was kind of like the first clues. He had some conversations with Adam Sandler where Adam, was holding him, and he said, "Oh, you're going to get me tickets when you get older, and what team are you going to play for?" And he tells Adam, "I play Yankees." So there were little hints there on that trip, but when we came home is when he really dove into, like, insisting that he used to be a tall baseball player. And as Jeroen was saying, I would correct him, and he would say, "No, Mommy, I was tall like Daddy." And so finally I started listening. And the one thing that really got my attention and my husband's attention was we were in an elevator one day, and he had just turned 3 years old, and at this time still didn't watch television, didn't read. And we're in an elevator, and he says, "Mommy, this elevator kind of reminds me of a hotel." And we said, "Yeah, kind of." And he said, "When I was a tall baseball player, when I was tall like Daddy, I used to stay in hotels almost every night." And so we kind of looked at each other like, okay. And then I said, "Well, did you fly on airplanes?" And then he looks at us and he says, "No, mostly trains." And so we looked it up and we were like, wow, Babe Ruth traveled on trains. Like every time he would look something up that he would say, it would be correct. Like he would say things like, "Mommy, when I played baseball, we only played our games during the day because there were no lights on the fields." And we'd look it up and there were no lights until the 1940s. And then just every single thing that he would do would prove to be correct. And so finally, I originally reached out to Carol Bowman, who wrote a story. She's written a book on children's past lives. And this kind of ties into what you were saying about wanting to stay private. She has a blog. She has like a forum where parents write about their kids' experiences. And I was really reluctant to do that. I just didn't really want to, make a big deal about this. And partially because our son has kind of a big following on the internet. Like he's got 7 million views on YouTube for his baseball. And he's got, like Fox Sports has written articles on him. But we've never, ever, ever mentioned anything about these past life memories that he shared with us. So it was kind of a scary thing because he is kind of like already publicly out there. It was even more scary, because if we come out with our story, then people know right where to find him. But what we did do when he turned 5, we had Dr. Tucker, who is, he's from the University of Virginia. He's an associate professor of psychiatry and neurobehavioral sciences, and he heads the Division of Perceptual Studies that was originally founded by Dr. Ian Stevenson in 1967. And so Dr. Tucker and Dr. Stevenson have accumulated 2,500 cases of these children between the ages of 3 to about 6 that have these past life memories, like children from all over the world. And so he came to our house shortly before I met Jeroen. He came to our house in February of 2014, and he interviewed Christian. Our son's name is Christian. And while he was here, my son said to Dr. Tucker, he said, "Well, I chose her to be my mother, and then she got old." And I was shocked because my son had never said anything about choosing me to be his mother or anything like this. And then we asked him, he asked, "Where were you when you chose her?" And he said, "In the sky." And then I asked, "Well, when did you choose me?" And he said, "Well, when you were born." And then just as I asked him then, I said, "Well, what happened in between?" Because I was 41 when he was born, so I wanted to hear, like, what's heaven like, like what happened between the time you picked me and the time you were born. And he said, "Well, I don't remember that." And just as I thought that he was making this up, Dr. Tucker said that many, many, many of these children, like a high percentage of these children that come in bearing these past life memories, recall choosing their parents. And many times they can tell you, like, exactly where they were and where the parents were when they chose them. So this was all very new to me. And what led me to Jeroen and the regressions was when Dr. Tucker was leaving our house. I thanked him, and it was, it was a very enlightening day that we had, and I said, gosh, I really love that you're so scientific and you don't dabble in this, hypnosis and regression things, because I'm a Christian and this seems like a little bit like going to a psychic or a little dark side to me, and I'm scared of that. And so what he says to me, this medical doctor says to me, well, actually, some amazing things have come out of past life regressions that are historically factual and really can't be disputed. So what this did is it sparked my interest because my son had been telling me at that point for 2 years that I was his mother when he was Lou Gehrig. I showed him pictures, and he said, Mommy, this was you. You were her. And I never really believed him, right? So I thought, well, maybe if I do a regression, I can figure out if he's tricking me on this one. So I had Jeroen's phone number. My girlfriend had given it to me months before, and the minute that Dr. Tucker left, I pulled the piece of paper out. I dialed his number. I called him. I made an appointment for the following week, and that's pretty much where he can take over from here and tell you what happened during our sessions. But, without any prompting from him or any anticipation of what would happen, I literally was transported to the life of this woman that my son had been telling me that I was. And I was giving dates and information that there's no possible way I could have known, like things that I only could verify through death certificates. And it took me months to research, actually. So I'll let Jeroen take over from here.
Oh, Cathy, it's so good to hear your voice. So, when Cathy came in, I just immediately liked her, and we found out, as we were chatting, the first part of the session, we have a conversation, that we were both Geminis, and, it was very much a Gemini sort of tainted conversation, lots of laughter, and we just had a lot of fun is what I remember. And so we were going through, what the structure of the session was like, and she said that she wanted to find out about that past life, so... and she had written, those questions down to be asked to her subconscious. And of course, as you know, Candace, we don't tell people, you're going to go to this lifetime or going to go to a particular place and time. We just let whatever their subconscious deems appropriate for the person to see, to experience, to let that come forward. So, I didn't know what we were headed for. So, so I take her through the induction, and she starts describing this working class environment in the last century on the East Coast. And, I kept it very clean, so to say. I just kind of described what she looks like, what her environment looks like, and, stay very factual. And, as she's describing her body and her environment, it becomes very clear that she is, in fact, describing the life of Lou Gehrig's mom, Christina. I think the first session that we did, she started off sitting on a couch with a little dog. Was it the first session, Cathy? I think so, right?
We did it 3 times. So we actually have the recordings, and I've written the transcript. So we did it in April, and June, and November, I believe.
Yeah.
And so, they do blur together a bit. But the way I remember is the first session was pretty much kind of the Lou Gehrig's life up until her death.
Second one was when she was in Germany and she came over. Right?
Yeah, like childhood and then immigrating to the United States. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one was more detailed, the details about the objects and the items that you were supposed to verify.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So this is really fascinating for me as a practitioner. I had never experienced this before, and I haven't experienced it since. That the same client will go to the same past life. Normally I just do one session with somebody, and they might even go to different lifetimes in one session. But Cathy just kept going back to the same lifetime, just unearthing more details about it, and I was fascinated. So I asked her subconscious why were we doing this? Why was this lifetime so important for her? And it kept saying that she is to write a story about this and get details through the regression that she can verify with still living relatives and friends or people that have known, the Gehrig family. So the story would get more credibility for people that need that. Cathy described, the environment that she's from. She likes science and, things have been researched. I'm completely the opposite. Like science, we'll do that later. I just want to first I don't want to get to the good woo-woo first. I want to hear about what's possible. And then science, we'll figure that out later. So, but I really appreciate, being part of Cathy's process because she is such a great researcher. And, I'm very skeptical. I'm from the Netherlands. We're kind of a cerebral, rational people. We don't, go for this woo-woo stuff. But, here I am doing this work. And during sessions, sometimes I'm thinking, like, are people just pulling my leg? What's going on? So my way of questioning is that I ask about really sort of simple, trivial, day-to-day things to see if people can get those details that, they might not know about in their current lifetime. So the same was with Cathy when she described when I took her to an important date in the lifetime of Christina Gehrig. She described walking over the parking lot at the Yankee Stadium, and she was wearing her beautiful dress because this is the first time that she and her husband would go see their son play at the Yankee Stadium. So I'm thinking, well, as you're watching a game, you must be able to. People snag, they have some food, they have some drinks. I was wondering what people would eat in those days. So I asked her, and she goes, I think we're having some warm nuts. And I asked, is it peanuts? And she goes, no, I think it's chestnuts. And I don't think, Cathy, you told me later that you had never even seen chestnuts in your life before.
Yeah, I'm from California, so I've never even seen a chestnut. That's true.
Yeah. And then the other funny thing was, it's like, well, what are you drinking while you're watching the game? And she goes, oh, we're having a cola. Who says that?
Yeah, which is a word that I have never used. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really funny. And then I remember you using some German words as well, like some German nicknames, or I think your husband at the time, you're in your past life. So
yeah.
Heinrich, was that his full name?
Heinrich, yeah.
Yeah.
The other funny thing about that Yankee game too was, remember when you said you said, oh, your son, is he a good player? And I said, he's the new kid, just words that I wouldn't use. I said, he's the new kid. And then you immediately said, well, how old is he? And I said, 22. Like numbers would just come out of my mouth. And then I would get home. There's no way that I knew how old Lou Gehrig was when he played his first major league game. I would never know when he switched from the minor leagues to the major leagues and he was literally 22, his first season for the Yankees. So just and the word cola, and my voice, my intonation was different. My English, like I would say gotta and gonna, and like all these inflections that I never would use in my real life.
Yeah,
it was so fascinating, Cathy. It's just.
Yeah.
May I ask, what was going on in your, in your mind, thinking about all of this? Were you going back and forth? Were you struggling with the concept? What was? I can imagine, different scenarios of what might be happening just internally as you're thinking about all this. But can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I would say your conscious mind is always kind of in a battle with your subconscious. It seems like when you're in that state, which I have to say it felt like 5 minutes and it was like 2 hours or 3 hours, some crazy amount of time, but you really feel like it's 5 minutes, but you're very present. And you hear these words coming out of your mouth and you almost don't believe it as you're saying it, but you remember everything. And another strange thing from that session, where my logical mind could not catch up with it until about 6 months later because it was so strange, was at the very end of the session, he took me to the end of my life, and I said I was in a hospital, and I could feel, I described my body. He has a great way of having you be in, I was inside of this body. I could see my hands. I could see my feet. I could see everything in the room. I explained how I died and that I was cremated, and I described my funeral, and then I go out of my body and I go, basically into a heavenly state. And I see my family, and he says, do you see Lou? And I said, yes. And then he said, what does he say to you? And he comes up and he gives me a hug. I said, he gave me a hug, and he said, I will find you. Okay, so then this was the weird part for me. You were talking like, what is your conscious mind thinking when this is happening? So I'm just like saying these things but not really believing it, and all of a sudden I start crying. And this is me, who does not believe in regressions, who doesn't believe in the woo-woo, and I have tears like flowing down my cheeks, And so he says, I see that you're emotional, what are you feeling? And I say, because he did find me and he's Christian, and I'm crying through it. But I have to say, once I left there, I was like, okay, that's the strangest thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. And I'm not even sure if I believe it. So I think every time I went back and it would happen again, it gave me more and more proof. And in the very last regression, there was just some amazing things where I brought up information that I was able to verify through people who are still living today, that there's absolutely no way I could have gotten this information from the internet, from a book. Like, it was private information that only their family would know. So I think that's when I was finally convinced that it was all real.
I was just really blown away. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jeroen. What were you going to say?
Yeah, you go.
I was just blown away by. I'd heard the name Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig's disease. That's what I was familiar with. I didn't even know he was a baseball player, so I found that out during his session. And I thought the session went really well, and I was just really happy with the information that we had gotten and like the questions that were answered by the subconscious. And then later, Cathy starts emailing me just pictures and all these facts that matched what she had told me about during the session. So I was blown away, because up until that time, I had not had a client that had a past life persona that whose life could be checked and verified. So that was mind blowing for me.
Right.
Yeah, that's what that was. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, one thing, there were little details. Maybe you guys can tell me more about this because you're more familiar. But I got, like, all the numbers seemed to be right, except there was one, is that as I was dying, he said, how old are you? And I said, 62. Like, that number 62 came out. And when I researched it later, she was 72 when she passed away. So I always wonder with that one thing. I'm like, why did I have that wrong? Is the memory imperfect, or is the information coming through? I mean, it was similar, but it wasn't like right on like everything else was. So,
yeah.
Well, there's probably a lot of different ways to explain that. I know, we're sort of taught in general when we do this type of exploration to actually not specifically ask for things like that, addresses, names, exactly, because this engages a part of the brain that's very analytical, very logical, and sometimes can tend, not always, but can tend to shut down a session. So we kind of shy away from that direct question, and yet if in a session like that, if the client offers this information, of course we write it down. I mean, I've written down addresses before, when characters have gotten into cabs and other things like that. But as Jeroen was saying, it's, we take these clients to lives, but most of them don't have a history that you can get onto the internet and find out about. If you're just, a butcher or baker or a candlestick maker at some point, some point in, in history around the planet, you can't really find out about. You can't verify the way that you were able to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't get stuck on those numbers so much, because it, like what Candace just explained, it can sort of bring in more of the conscious mind. But I was just fascinated by what was matching. I mean, it was like 95% of the information, like all the birth and the death of his Lou Gehrig siblings, all the dates when they went, like the sequence of when they died, and I mean, it's stuff that.
Yeah, I went through like the death of these children. I know that was really like heart-wrenching too. To even listen to that recording is almost upsetting when I talk about like my baby dying and when and where and what time of year and how. And that was one where I ordered the death certificate and it was all correct.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Isn't that amazing? Like, isn't it amazing that the research that she's doing, she's done to verify this past life experience. I've not had anybody who took it this serious and really, put the facts together with what she uncovered in the session. I was just really amazed by it.
I have one, Jeroen, that I haven't even told you about, but just happened recently that I really discovered. I just came back from Bali for the month of November, where I actually wrote an entire book on the journey from the beginning up until now. And Jeroen is a big part of that. And on my way, on the plane, on the way to Bali, I watched this movie called The Pride of the Yankees, which is a movie about Lou Gehrig's life. And it's starred Gary Cooper is the star of the movie. And in that movie, they have a scene. They have Lou Gehrig retires from baseball, and he gives his speech at Yankee Stadium where he says, "Today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth, and I may have been given a bad break, but I have an awful lot to live for." Well, if he's giving this speech in this Hollywood rendition of his life, he knows that he's going to be dying soon. He's been told that he has, less than a year or two to live. Well, one thing that came up when we did our regression was that I talk about my son retiring from baseball, and I'm on the field. This was my first regression that we did together. I'm there watching him retire. I talk about how the cameras are hurting my ears. Like, it's very sensory. The sounds, the smells, the everything is just so vivid. And so then when he says, go to the next significant scene in the life of this woman, then I go forward and my son has passed away. And I talk about being very surprised by his death, like we had no idea it was coming. I say very specific things that we had no idea that he was going to die. Well, that summer I was able to go to the Baseball Hall of Fame Museum in Cooperstown, and because my son was there with two Hall of Fame baseball players, one is Tommy Lasorda, and the other one is Orlando Cepeda, who's the coach, his son is the coach of my son's travel baseball team. I was given access to all of the private documents of the Gehrig family. Like, I was able to spend 6 hours. It's really crazy. I was able to spend 6 hours a day in the Giamatti Research Center, and the librarians would bring down a tray to me every day of these documents that were 100 years old that can only be touched with white gloves, and they're only really supposed to be accessed by the family of the person. Well, I was able to go through it, and I found a letter from Lou Gehrig's mother-in-law to his mother, and it says, "I swear to you on my life that Lou did not know he was going to die until the day he breathed his last breath," or something like this. And that's we had never told you, and we never told Lou that he was going to die. My daughter never told anybody. So what's truly amazing is that this information that came out of the regression actually kind of changes history, because as far as everybody else knows, when Lou Gehrig gave that speech, he knew that he was going to die. But according to the regressions and according to this letter from his mother-in-law, who's his wife's mother, he had no idea he was going to die up until the moment that he passed away.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness.
That's amazing.
Cathy, no wonder you're writing a book. No wonder.
Yeah, and I feel like this stuff that's come through, like, it's not an accident and it just needs to be shared. And Lou Gehrig's story, it's like a story that's kind of drifting away and people don't really even know who he is, young kids,
Mm-hmm.
So because it came through, I feel like a responsibility to share it, Can
I ask a question, Cathy? Kind of a question about your internal life, like your dreams or your daydreams or small things that might happen to you just in your own daily life. I guess my question is, did any of those things change for you? Did you find yourself feeling connected to Christina, or did the other things begin to seem familiar, or did you feel an affinity towards some things that you didn't, or did she always seem like this completely separate persona that that there was a great big line between you? I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what it feels like now. Now my son's memories have pretty much dissipated too, and he's 7 now. So what it feels like we have a picture of Lou Gehrig and his mother sitting next to my son's bed, and it really almost feels like a relative who's passed away, where you look at a picture of your grandmother and you feel forever connected to that person. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like you have
really
like a
does.
love and an affinity for that person, and that's how my son feels towards Lou Gehrig. I mean, he's in his heart, basically. Like if you ask my son, is Lou Gehrig alive today? He would say yes, and then if you say, well, where is he? He would say, in my heart. That's kind of the best way to describe it.
Oh, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how about you then? Do you feel that too with Christina? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely do.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely do.
And how about this? I wonder this. Have things changed for you at all? Again, like, you know, were you an active daydreamer? Did you really remember your dreams? Did you have kind of any kind of fantastical life in your own mind? And did that change after all of this? Did it grow?
I would say, especially my dreams at night, like what I've really come to the conclusion through this whole thing is that tapping into this subconscious mind is really a gateway to the divine. I really feel that, and I feel that since I had these sessions with Jeroen, like, what was it, a year and a half ago or so, it's really activated my subconscious mind in a way that even when I'm sleeping at night, I get very vivid dreams, sometimes with messages, and it's just a part of my brain that wasn't really open before, maybe like a third eye that kind of blasts open, you know.
Mhm. Very interesting. So do you have a title for your book yet? I know you're working on it and you are in the completion stages.
I do. It's called The Boy Who Knew Too Much. The Boy Who Knew Too Much. And that we can share with you kind of the big concluding thing. Do you want to share that part, Jeroen, about the jewelry?
I was just wondering about it because, I remember, thank you, during a session, there was like a little necklace, I think it was it like jade or something that was in it?
A jade necklace and a charm bracelet from Japan.
Right. And there was something with a bird, right?
Yeah, well, I was living with a family. Yeah, it was like, I know this stuff so well because I just got done writing the book, so I know it in and out. So in the very last session, I spent the whole time talking about a family that I lived with in the last couple of years of my life. I described the floor plan of their house, what their house looked like from the outside, what my car looked like. I said I would go to the Little League games. I described children that I lived in the house with and this family. And I said there's a 7-year-old little girl with short brown hair and a 10-year-old little boy who plays Little League, and I go to all of his games, and I bring cookies, and all the kids come running to my car. You know, these things all came out through questions that Jeroen would ask me, but that's basically what came out. And then I said that I had, he asked, do you have any things that you own? And I said, yeah, I have this trunk with my things in it. And I described some jewelry, and I said, I'd like the little girl to have it, but I probably need to give it to her mother to hold on to until she gets older. Well, he had me describe what the jewelry looked like. And then after our session, I was able to go through the research I had done in the summer. I found the name of a family that was getting, the Hall of Fame Museum was going to be making copies of pictures for them in 1954 when Christina Gehrig passed away. I was able to find these people, and not only did I have the ages right of these children, when you calculate it, I found them. So the woman who was 7 is now a 70-year-old realtor in Connecticut, and the man who was 10 years old in my regression was a 73-year-old pastor. And this pastor was kind of a renowned, amazing man. He would be a really interesting person to talk to, too. He worked with Martin Luther King Jr. He worked in Salem, Massachusetts for 16 years as the head pastor of a church where they helped the witches get out of witchcraft. Like a really amazing man. He runs tours to Israel. So I called him with my past life story, thinking I was going to get kicked to the curb, but he was really the only person that I could run this jewelry thing by. And I explained to him everything from beginning to end, and I said, so what do you think? And he said, I think it's fascinating. And he said, I can't go along with the reincarnation theory because it's not part of my faith, because he's a Methodist pastor. He said, but I can tell you that you described the floor plan of my house perfectly, and I can tell you that my sister did inherit the jewelry you're describing. You know,
my
that you
goodness.
described. And here's the amazing thing, the most amazing thing, this jewelry has been buried under their house for 60 years because when they inherited it, it was far too valuable for them to insure. So they kept it. They built a walk-in safe under their house, and their mother just passed away last summer. And so they've never really told anyone that they have this jewelry. So that was when I was convinced. I was like, okay, this is the information I needed so that I could believe this stuff.
Fascinating. Wow. You know, I don't think I knew this. This is like new information for me. I'm you know, because I was wondering about it. I was also wondering about the I remember as Christina, you opened a trunk and then there was it was almost like a medal, like it had like Japanese
a medal
inscription.
Yep, like a medal from Japan. There were some, all of these things that I could see so clearly, you know.
Did you remember?
And they did keep the dog and the bird. They did keep the dog and the bird. Remember, you said, well, what are you going to do with your pets when you die? And I said, I think the family's going to keep them for me.
Because I care for animals so much. So
yeah, and I talked about how to cover the bird.
Right.
Yeah, you were worried about the dog.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this pastor is such a lovely man, and he's got stories galore about this woman, Mom Gehrig, and how she started the Little League there in Milford, Connecticut. Yeah.
So I can't wait for this to come out.
May I ask some questions about the whole concept of Lou Gehrig and his illness? Did that come up in the session at all?
Trying to think. I know what I kept saying, because he said, well, do you know what it is? And I said something with his nervous system, but we don't really know. And I kept saying, but he's going to be okay. He's going to be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It
was like, it was just maybe a few words that were mentioned about it, you know, and then that's what I remember. And then when we moved you further along, he had already passed. But it seemed like something but it seemed like something that was not, you know, it was very aware, was very present in her life. Like she didn't know, like, oh, he's going to be fine. Yeah. That's what I remember.
The funnier thing that kept coming up was the rivalry between the mother and the daughter-in-law. I kept saying, she's a funny lady, and then Jeroen would ask me, well, where is she now? And I'd say, oh, probably Hollywood. She's a Hollywood type.
Right.
I kept making fun of her kind of, and then the letter that I found talks about raging fights between the mother and the daughter-in-law.
I think it's funny, too, because I heard you say, well, she's a funny lady, and I had the feeling that you as Christina was sort of, you know, you would hold back and you wouldn't sort of openly talk bad about others. So when you said, you know, she's a funny lady, I think I asked you, like, well, funny how, you know.
How funny how, exactly. Because I never really said anything mean about her, so you can tell that Christina's kind of a nice person.
Right.
Yeah, she was very, very nice.
So not funny, ha-ha.
Yeah.
Well, I guess some of the questions that I meant about the illness was when you were in the SC part, the subconscious or the higher self portion of the session, was that talked about at all? The sort of maybe the life plan or the contract between the two of them concerning, you know, the illness and the son dying before the mother.
Yeah, well, you know what was interesting about it? I think the most, like, amazing thing that came out was he asked me, like, what's the purpose of you and of Cathy and Christian reuniting in this lifetime? And my higher self, what I said, which is kind of simple and profound at the same time, I said to relive the good times. So it really wasn't even about, like, the evolution of the soul. It was really to go, like, eat an ice cream cone, go to a baseball game, like, and it's given me, like, this greater appreciation for just the day-to-day, you know, wonderful things that life has to offer, you know?
Because we're here to have fun and experience joy, and And often we have to be reminded of that.
Yeah, that's something I never think of yet.
How do some of the people around you who may be aware of course, now your story and some of your research and all of that, have you found different reactions to you personally since the stories come out and you're interested in it and you're writing the book? And what would some of those reactions be if you care to share them at all?
Yeah, well, here's the funny thing. You guys are the first ones to really even hear about it. Like, even the people closest to me don't know this much. Just because of that, it's a little scary. I did have some, I write about it in the book, how when I first told my two closest friends, they kind of made fun of me, and they said, he probably, saw it on TV, or, they just tried to discount it, and it really hurt me, and we've had neighbors, kind of make fun of Christian, my son, about it. And we had a baseball coach, like an opposing baseball coach, say, that's the kid who thinks he's Lou Gehrig. Kind of hurtful stuff. So I am prepared for that because I know, especially there's, people who are conservative, and I come from that background myself, so I get it, is that this is kind of an unconventional, not fully accepted concept. And kind of at the end, the conclusion I come to is, because I don't want to influence people to believe one thing or the other, is I say, I can't say with certainty that reincarnation is a fact, as much as somebody can say that it's not a fact. No one really knows the mystery of life, right? But really, my main conclusion at the end of the story is, I say the one thing I know for sure now is that love never dies, and that the soul is eternal,
That's a beautiful realization. I think it's also really interesting that a story like this comes through you, Cathy. Being from the background that you're from, you are sort of, from a more conservative place and religious. And because I'm thinking, if you write your story and you've got it backed up with so many of these, facts that you verified and checked, I think the people that, from your sort of, would you call it like a demographic, they might be more open to listening to somebody like you, closer to them, and who has, checked the facts, and it might open them up to, having a more open mind about this.
And even just
matter.
The possibility, right? And the one thing I have to say, even as a Christian, I never knew the history of the Christian church. I never knew that the early scriptures actually talked about rebirth and reincarnation, so I was able to research that. So that's, exactly. You've studied that. See, it's not something that the average Christian is exposed to, the history of the church, So I get to put, that's in my journey, a part of my journey. And really, I go through the Eastern religions, I go through the Jewish religions, I go through all of it. And I come to the conclusion at the end that it's okay to be a Christian and have Christian faith and believe in reincarnation. They're not mutually exclusive,
Exactly. At least that's most of what our community has also come to the conclusion of. But of course, you get to decide as a human being what your belief system is. So whatever
and it's not our job, right?
My husband would say.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like that's a big job. I don't want that responsibility to tell other people what to think.
So Christian's still a baseball player.
Yeah, he is.
He still has the love of the game and is still interested in continuing to play ball. That's wonderful.
Yeah, he plays a lot. He plays 5 games almost every weekend all year round.
Well, it would seem to me that the book that you're writing, maybe this is something I don't have any right to say, but it seems like it would only be like the first book. You know what I mean? Your son is young and still very interested in ball playing, and maybe it's my intuition, or maybe it's just because I love stories so much. It would seem to me like there's going to be another story at some point in time.
That would be interesting to see the end of the story, right? Whether it's that he doesn't play baseball or continues to play, like, it's still kind of interesting to see how it plays out, right? The other interesting thing, he's left-handed too, and Lou Gehrig was left-handed, and his technique was very similar to Lou Gehrig's. It's changed a bit now, but if you look at the early videos of him when he was 2 and 3 and 4, his technique was exactly like Lou Gehrig.
That's really interesting. Now, how about physical characteristics? Is he going to be a tall boy? Do they have the same nose, the same hair color?
Well,
how about that?
Here's, I haven't written about this in the book, but they both have these deep, deep, deep dimples. Like if you see my son, that's all you see is his dimples, and if you look at a picture of Lou Gehrig, all you see is his dimples. And it's not something that's really genetically present in our family. Like it's not like I have dimples. So, and then another funny thing is that if you look at the ancestral ties, my husband is an immigrant from Germany. He came here when he was 18. His family is from the exact same region in Germany that Lou Gehrig's family immigrated from this area that was called Schleswig-Holstein, which Jeroen can tell you about because it's near where he's from. But, I mean, there's also, like, that whole part that's a little bit, interesting and kind of strange at the same time, too.
Mm-hmm. And what was Lou Gehrig's wife's name again, then? The daughter-in-law's name?
Eleanor. And she passed away. I want to say she passed away in, like, the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Does your mind wander like mine would? Like, is she reincarnating? Is she a little girl in your son's school right now? I mean, do you think about things like that?
Well, I kind of joke about it because here I'm trying to write this book to set the record straight, because Eleanor Gehrig was the one who did the movie Pride of the Yankees, and she painted Lou Gehrig's mother horribly in that movie. And in her own book, which is called My Luke and I, she writes about Lou Gehrig's mother, and she writes, Mom Gehrig was no hero. And then she proceeds to, kind of badmouth her. So I always joke that I'm going to do my book, and then Eleanor's going to come back and get me back.
So funny.
Like, you can never get the last word, right?
That is so funny. Fight across lifetimes. Oh, my God.
Yep. You never know, right?
Very, very interesting. Well, I'm happy to hear any other thing about the book or any other topic that this has brought forth into your life or your family's life, or even, yours, your own, how this has changed you or your practice. What are some of the big conclusions that you've come to? I know that you said, Cathy, to find joy in your life, but I just want to, make sure that we're getting all of the things that you want to say about this tonight.
Jeroen, you want to take that one? Yeah.
Should I go first? Sure. So for me, like I said, being from Northern Europe, and we're not a very religious group of people. Like I was raised in Catholic Church for a little bit, but I didn't have any experience of spirit at all. There was no joy, there was no beauty. It was just very, very boring and repetitive, and it just didn't leave any mark. So my parents were raised in post-war Netherlands, which was very, religion was more about discipline and doing what you're supposed to be doing. So they had a really bad taste in their mouth from, being brought up as Catholic. So when I was about 7 years old, they stopped taking me to church. And when I talked to them not too long ago, and I asked them, what do you believe about life? Like, what do you believe about it? And they say, well, we just believe that, you live your life, and you're supposed to be kind to people because that's how you live on in the hearts of others, in the good deeds that you do and how you treat other people, which is, I think, really beautiful. But in terms of like a past life or, life after lifetimes, or there's none of that. Like they've completely, they don't believe in anything really. So, me, I believe more than they do now because of the experiences I've had through my clients, and Cathy's experience is sort of pivotal in that, because before, I listened to these people telling me all these wonderful, wonderful stories that, I want to believe so badly, and then Cathy comes in and she she does the same thing, and she fact checks, and and everything matches. That was really it was very sort of consolidating for me. And I consider myself lucky that I had another client who also had a past life that was verifiable. So yeah, I don't know.
Cathy, before you do any wrapping up yourself, we actually now there's a couple of people holding who have questions. So
okay.
How about we take a couple questions, okay?
That sounds good. Hey, I have a little visitor in my office if you want to say hi to Christian real quick. If you want to say hi to Christian, just say hello. Oh, I guess not. He said, not unless I take him to my Christmas party. He's not wanting to stay with a babysitter. I'm happy to do that. One thing, I just want to compliment Jeroen real quickly, too, is that I think what made our session so successful, because I'm guessing you have people that listen that are practitioners as well, but I think I just felt so safe in his company, and I trusted him so much, and I think that's what let me really go to that place.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jane.
That's a great compliment. Well, let's go ahead and take a question and see what some of our audience have to say or have questions about. And you are now live. Area code 704. You have your hand up for a question. Hello.
Hello, everyone. How are y'all?
Hi. Who do we have tonight? Who are you?
My name is Kim. I'm calling from Florida.
Hi, Kim.
Thank you for calling.
Kim.
I have a question for Cathy. Since your son is still pretty young, should he have his own QHHT session when he gets a little older, just to make sure that he doesn't develop the ALS again in this life?
You know what? That's a really good question. And I had an interesting thing happen where I was able to meet Wayne Dyer right before he passed away last June. And he was writing this book called Memories of Heaven, which is all about children's past life memories and invisible friends and memories of heaven. Well, Wayne had done a regression with this woman, Mira Kelly, who Jeroen and I both know well. And she actually came to our house and did a session with my son, and primarily to address his breathing issues because he's had asthma since he was a baby. And it was really interesting. I was very reluctant to do it because he's so young. But she brought him to a place where he could give his breathing issues back to Lou Gehrig. And I have to say, I've been reluctant to put it in the book because it's so recent. It was only almost a year ago. But he has not had any breathing problems since then. So, it probably wouldn't help to do a little more of that in the future, I think.
I think it would be interesting if he had a session when he gets a little older, and that way he can write his own book.
Yeah,
kind of be a sequel to your book.
I like that. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Kim. Do you have another question?
By the way, really quickly, I did want to say that I saw a movie years ago when I was probably 20, and I'm now 54, and that movie about Lou Gehrig, I don't know, it really impacted me, and it made me want to become a student of psychology and everything. And now my uncle has been diagnosed with ALS.
Oh, you're kidding.
Oh, my goodness.
So your life has been touched by that. Oh, my goodness. Oh.
So, but I do hope to get a chance to read your book when it comes out. So.
Oh, thank you so much, Kim.
Thanks for calling, Kim. Yeah, well, stay tuned for that. Do you have a publisher lined up and a date and all that kind of stuff, Cathy, or that's all still in the works?
Well, I sent my Hay House was waiting for my proposal since June when I met Wayne Dyer, and I just finished it in November, right before I left for Bali, and I sent it to them. So there's nothing official, but it's it's all kind of in the works. And then we have a friend at Sony Pictures is kind of interested in possibly doing a movie on it too. So we'll see how that all unfolds next year.
Sure. And Jeroen, you should probably You could play yourself in the movie, wouldn't you?
I was about to say the guy playing me better be cute.
Very handsome, because Jeroen is very handsome.
Thank you.
Well, let's take another question from the audience, shall we? So I am turning the mic over to area code 780. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Hi.
And
Hello.
what's your name?
I'm Naomi.
Hi,
Hi,
Naomi. Thanks for calling. What's your question?
I was just wondering, like, how could you, how would I be able to remember any of my past lives on my own?
Jeroen, you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean, on your own, I would think it would be helpful to find a practitioner that can help you do that, because it's, it's so much more conducive to your state of mind, and being able to get to the details of your past life when you have somebody with you that sort of holds space for you and knows how to guide you and sort of direct your focus, so you can unearth the details of your past life or past lives.
Okay.
Yeah, and Naomi, you can do that remotely too. Like, you could do it remotely. Like, you can even do it on the phone. Like, you don't really have to be with the person, but I think it works much better when you do have a practitioner asking you the questions rather than just a generic pre-recorded thing, because you can't do generic pre-recorded sessions, but I think the one-on-one is much more valuable.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful to be with somebody, because there's stuff that can happen during a session. Like, there's stuff that the body can show, that the practitioner is aware of, and that can be used during a session. Like movements or breathing that happens, or certain, the eyes that start tearing, or different things that can happen during a session that you cannot monitor over the phone. So, as Candace knows, that we've been taught by Dolores, and so that's what we don't do any long distance sessions.
No, okay,
yeah.
good to know.
Because it's difficult to monitor the body, and also, like, me and Candace, we had some technical difficulties before we started this talk here on the radio. And what if, like, the Skype connection falls away, and you're trying to get somebody to call you back and stuff like that,
Yeah, good point. That's a really good point.
Well, these sessions can be very emotional, and it's, Cathy, you yourself said how important it was, the trust that you felt with Jeroen as your practitioner, and you're probably going to feel safer and trust your practitioner a little better if they're right there in the room with you. And although it's rare, sometimes, very strange things can happen when you are going into that realm. I'm thinking right now of a particular session I had with a woman who, she was having a past life memory of being this woman. She was a slave on a plantation, and she was actually a very happy woman. She was older. She felt cared for both by, the plantation owner, and she had a big family, and she'd gotten to be this age where she wasn't working anymore, and she was just sitting on the porch. It was actually a very happy life, believe it or not. And she had suffered a stroke. And when I moved her forward to a particular day, and she, had suffered a stroke, and she was still sitting in her rocking chair on the porch. But she was talking about how one part of her body wasn't working anymore. And actually, in the regression, during the time that I'm looking at her, she starts drooling out of the side of the mouth of her face that wasn't working anymore. One whole side of her face wasn't moving anymore. And so these things are, these kinds of explorations, you really are time traveling. I mean, you're time traveling.
Yeah, and you do. I can see how you do need a guide there with you. Exactly, to be at your side. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Naomi, I will say this, and some people were talking about this over in the chat room. Wonderful Lorraine Chisholm, who is also a QHHT practitioner, mentioned this in the chat room. You can sometimes, just on your own, you can try this. You can try telling yourself before going to bed, you can kind of program a dream. You can program yourself to have a dream about a past life. Try to make it, something that you might enjoy experiencing. You might ask your higher self to give you a dream of a past life when you were very happy, etc. And see where that takes you.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks for the call, Naomi.
Thanks, Naomi.
Well,
Bye, Naomi.
Bye. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Well, that was really great to have a couple of questions there for you all.
Yeah.
Were there any more?
Thank you.
I don't see any more questions at the moment. And I guess I'd just like to have Cathy go ahead and wrap up anything else you'd like to say, and we'll let you go back to Christian and your pre-Christmas celebration.
Yeah, well, he just fell asleep on my lap, so I don't have to worry about him.
Oh, how sweet.
Put him to sleep. So I just want to thank you guys, because this was like a really, big deal for me to actually talk about this stuff, openly, and you've created a very safe place for me to do that, so thank you for that.
Oh.
Gosh, you're so welcome.
Thank you for your willingness to to come on the radio show and share your experiences. It was so helpful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we'd like to know, and Jeroen, please let us know as soon as the book is published and how we can get a hold of it. And we'll combine all of these things together. Maybe we'll have a YouTube replay of the show, but we can combine it with a blog article that's already gone out, and we'll send out another article when the book is published. Will you let us know, Cathy and Jeroen?
Beautiful. Thank you.
The boy who knew too much.
Definitely. And Candace and Jeroen, I can send you what I have now, too, if you want to take a little sneak peek.
I would love that. I would love that.
Cool.
I come from a family that loves baseball, so it would be a
really?
lot of fun to do that.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Okay, beautiful.
Okay.
It's a first draft, so any suggestions are appreciated.
Would be honored. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye, Cathy. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you.
Bye, Cathy. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Goodbye. Bye. Okay. Well, Jeroen, this has been such a treat. Just such a treat. I remember when you first told us about your session on our support forum with the other practitioners, and it's been a lot of fun seeing this come together. First the article, and then, the opportunity to actually speak with your client like this. And even Christian, who came in, and we heard his little voice there a little bit, and you got to hear even more details about some of the proof that she has found and the connection and the stories with other people. What a fascinating case.
I know, it's really amazing. Yeah. It really blew my mind too, It's very fascinating.
Well, in the little time that we have left, we've got about 10 minutes or so left in the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your practice there in the Los Angeles area? Oh, and by the way, I just happened to get an email from somebody like yesterday or the day before who was asking me about anyone who practiced in exactly that area. And, of course, we've got several wonderful practitioners, and I told her to be sure she listened to the show tonight.
Oh.
You actually do quite a few workshops where you do group regressions. Is that true?
Yes, thank you for asking me about it. I do, as you know, Dolores recorded some group past life exploration. So I do those once a month, every first Friday of the month. I think in January, though, I'm doing it the second Friday because it's just after New Year's, the first one. And I really love doing the group processes because, there's so many different people present, and afterwards people share about their experiences. And so both me and all the participants, we get such a broad view of what is possible in this technique. Like, people go to past lives as, I remember being, one guy being a dinosaur, people living in shacks and tending to, cattle, or being an alien and, walking into their current body. I mean, such a broad variety of experiences that are being told about. So, I find those groups really, it's like a little sample session. And the beautiful thing of those groups is as well that it seems to provide a bit of community for people that, there's not a whole lot of mythology out there for people that have had sort of odd experiences, like metaphysical experiences. They might, experience, being visited by beings or having a very strong connection to their guides and communicate with them, or people with a very strong sense of mission. I find that the younger generation, the third wave, as we call them, have such a strong sense of purpose here. And when they come to the groups, then it's like people find community and they find recognition and in the way they feel. And that's always a really beautiful thing for me to see. But so I do those groups once a month, first Friday of the month, and I do meditations every Thursday evening and Sunday morning in the Los Angeles area. So you can find the information on my website. And I love doing this work. I love people. I love to see people open up their minds and waking up and finding out about the beauty that that we all are at our core, all part of the all that is.
So let me ask you this. I do my fair share of group regressions. I get really busy, and sometimes it's a while between them. I don't do them as regularly as you do anymore. But do you have like groupies, like people who show up to do them all the time because they just think they're so fun, or do you have regular influx of new people?
Both actually. Yeah. There's a couple of them, they keep coming back, and then there's others that just new people that come in. Yeah, so people do it for various reasons. Yeah.
And may I ask too? I think I get a lot of repeats, but I'm in a much different place than where you are. There's many.
Right.
Many more people where you live, and a little bit of a different mindset, I think, than where I am here in Kansas. Although you'd be surprised. I remember when we first moved here, the little tiny town where I have my wellness studio right now. My husband Tom and I were just walking down the street, and there's this tiny little kind of a, you call it a drive-in place, but it's just almost like a little room where people stop to get hot dogs or burgers or just a little lunch place just right on the main road there. And I mean, you don't even go in to eat. There's like a couple picnic tables outside of this place, and it's been there for a very, very long time, and it's very campy. It's a wonderful, very interesting little building. And while we were having our French fries fried or whatever it was we were eating, I remember looking at the papers and little posters that people had tacked to the side of this little lunch shack, shall we say. And I looked at it, and there was a paper describing a get-together for UFO watchers.
No way.
And I remember looking at that, and I was thinking, I'm going to fit in just fine here, just fine. if this little, lunch shack on Main Street can openly talk about a meeting, where some UFO enthusiasts are getting together, we're going to do just fine right here. And that's really what it's ended up being. I've mostly, a lot of people have no idea, and a lot of people have a lot of questions, but I really have not found any negativity at all. Most people are quite interested.
That's so good to hear. I was wondering about that because, I'm wondering like where your practice is, like because you're in a commercial area, right?
Well, yes, but it's a very, very small town. I mean, it's a little suburb, a little bedroom community of the larger town, which is Wichita. The metro area itself has about 500,000 people, but I don't know how many people actually live in the little town of Augusta that's just east of it. But it's a small town for sure. I mean, a very small town.
That is so amazing. It must have been a sign for you, to see that UFO flyer. Because I would be worried about that. I was like, oh my God, where did I just land? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my first little time there, I didn't put up a sign or anything. But you know what? I actually have a tiny little poster in my window right now, and it's right across the street from the post office. Most everybody in town goes to the post office.
Post office,
and I have a tiny little poster in my window, and it just says, it has a little picture, kind of an old-fashioned picture of black and white of some kids in a wagon, and it says, "Who were you in a past life?" And
nice.
That's all. Just kind of, just a little bit.
and so, do your neighbors know what goes on?
They do. Like the person who has the shop right next door to me is a hairdresser, and she's as kind as can be. And sometimes, how hairdressers are. They can really have a good time when they're doing hair. And sometimes when she and her girlfriends sometimes get kind of, really laughing, I pick up my phone and text, I'm getting ready to start my session, get your giggles out now, I mean, we're very good friends, good buddies, but she's very she's very interested and will ask very often, because when the session is over, then I usually tell her, okay, I'm done with the session. So, you can get back to laughing loudly. Not that it really matters. It's never really mattered at all. But it's just, more comfortable that way for me. And so, there's a lot of people who know what I do. And they ask a lot of questions. And not, a fair number of people, travel in who just find me in other ways, for instance, this radio show. But more and more people from the local area absolutely are interested in coming forward. And something you had said earlier, Jeroen, about, people needing to have a place to talk about this kind of stuff. And there's a good number of those people who show up who, interestingly enough, will say some things like, I can't talk to my coworkers about this. But they'd be surprised how many of their coworkers are coming and sitting in the same chair saying the exact same thing, that they can't talk to their coworkers about it. It's like, well, you got to start talking.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I've had my fair share of those people as well. But of course, like you said, this is Los Angeles where I'm at, so there's I'm imagining much more available, different groups. There's a couple of practitioners here. There's all kinds of stuff going on. I mean, Los Angeles is a really, really great city for that. It's part of the reason why, I moved here. When I came to the States, I really, this is like the first place that I've ever felt home. It's a wonderful place to be for the reason, that I can do what I'm supposed to be doing here, and all the wonderful people that are here. There's such a diversity of people here, and it shows in the sessions as well. I really love, especially the first part of the session when we get to know somebody, it's just, it's just really wonderful to find out about people's lives and, the struggles that they've had. And, it's such a, it's such a common denominator that all of us, have our own journey, our own path, our own learning, and it's all valuable. And, we're all the same in that. And it's a beautiful thing. And it helps me to be more compassionate towards myself as well, and towards others, to find out about other people's lives. Because, you might meet somebody in the grocery store and, they might, I don't know, cut in line or something, but, you never know what goes on in their lives. There's, all of us have our struggles and our challenges. Yeah.
Hey, that brings me to something. I'm thinking about you being there. There's a lot of creative people in Los Angeles and Hollywood and all of that. Do you see a fair number of people who are in the movie industry or who are actors? And I wonder, too, about those people and when they take on roles and characters, how that might be impacted in a regression, and if you have any thoughts about that.
Oh, interesting. I didn't see any differences between, actors and sort of normal people. No, I didn't see any differences. It's more, along the lines of, sort of more, people are more, they have a lot of the conscious mind that needs to be kept out of the way or not, or they just go right into it. It's more along those lines. But in terms of, like, actors, do you mean, like, it becomes easier for them to take on their past life personas?
Oh, well, I wondered that, I wondered if, if they could step into another life experience, like they might step into a role in a play or in a film or something. I know that, you talk about this idea of, method actors or whatever, and I wondered if some of those people, might be, I really don't know. I don't have a lot of theater people in my own circle of friends, and so I just kind of wondered about that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I haven't seen, usually it's surprising to me, people that do go, completely into the past lives. It might be somebody that you think is sort of type A personality, or sort of holds on to their, conscious mind a lot, and suddenly, boop, there they go. You never know. So I haven't been able to tell, or even people that, they might be, healers or, spiritual practitioners of some sort, and you're thinking, well, they might have knowledge about the subject matter, and sometimes, they need a little bit more time to get into it, and other times they just go right away. I didn't find any professions or types of people where I can say, okay, this one's going to go for sure, and this one's going to, take a little bit of work. Yeah.
It's always a surprise, isn't it?
It's always a surprise, exactly. So you never know. Yeah.
So how about, why don't we end with this? Have you found your sessions have changed since beginning to practice this method? Gosh, if I've been doing this for about 7.5 years, you've been doing it for about 9.5 or almost 10 years. That's amazing. How have they changed in that time for you, if they have at all?
That's a good question. Well, they have changed in that my faith and confidence in the method has grown, so much. So I'm able to handle more challenging cases, so to say. In the past, when I first started, people would say, "Oh, I'm not under," I would believe them and just abort mission, sort of. But now it's just like, oh, what else is new? Let's keep going. And then, I throw some of the tools at them, and then, boom, there we are, the past lifetime. But in terms of, subject matter, I'm trying to think. I guess more people that are like straight from source, or that haven't been in Earth bodies before.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a few of those. I think you make a really great point, though. When people first take Dolores's class, of course, when you're new at anything, you gain skills and you gain confidence. But what Jeroen was talking about there really makes so much sense about after doing this for a time and then really trusting in Dolores's method, you find that she's given us the tools that to handle just about everything and just about anything. And if you just if you as a practitioner really believe that, and it becomes easier and easier to believe the more you do this, almost anything that happens in a session, and sometimes there can be just crazy things. I mean, I've seen actually I've seen glows come off of people's body, light. I've seen flashes of light in rooms and orbs floating around and windows and doors closing. And one of the coolest things that happened and I don't even think we said anything about this, but dear Michelle Walling, who came here for a session, and she actually talked about it on her Thanksgiving show. So she was fine talking about it, but I don't think we remembered to tell the audience about this one. So I was just getting her place ready to do this session. With we use real mattress beds. Some people use padded tables and stuff, but I'm getting the bed ready for her, and I'm spreading a sheet out, and I kind of just took the sheet and kind of flipped it, and I'm smoothing it out for her to lay down. And after I do that and she's getting ready to get in bed, down from the ceiling high above us comes this little tiny feather and lands right on the pillow, right in the middle of the pillow.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Yes, and I've had lots of feathers show up in the doorstep and sometimes on the table or in the floor, in the studio. But I've never ever had that happen before, where I'm getting the bed ready and I'm smoothing out the pillow, and just like in Forrest Gump, when that feather kind of flies in. And
That's
comes
beautiful.
Out.
Yeah.
And she had
That's
an
so
amazing
beautiful.
session. It was really wonderful.
Yeah, I enjoyed. Oh,
go ahead.
What did you say? Oh, I said for me, because as a kid, I was always looking for an experience of spirit, of the unseen worlds, and I feel like right now, this is the closest I'm getting, of sort of these other realms of existence, and beings from other planets, as we also get to talk to, ascended masters and alien beings, and it's just a wonderful, for me, experience to have an actual experience of these other worlds. I'm really, that's a big part of why I enjoy these sessions so much.
Mm-hmm. They really are enjoyable, and they can be a lot of fun for clients, and they can be profound, and they can be confirmations of things they already know, and they can be incredibly healing, and just so many things. I so love this work, and I love having relationships with other practitioners and colleagues like you. We've been friends for a long time from afar. You ever think you'll pass through and stop by and see me here in Kansas?
I would love to. I mean, on my list of things to do in the States is to do a cross-country road trip. So when I do one, I'll make sure I stop by. Give you a big hug.
Okay, well, you can't miss us. We're right in the middle of the country. Usually we're called like the flyover land, right?
Right.
Well, this has been so much fun. I always have so much fun talking with you, and anybody in the California or the Los Angeles area, you'd be in great hands to see Jeroen for a session, either his group sessions or visit him to have a one-on-one QHHT session, and you wouldn't regret it at all. Please tell us how everyone can find you, Jeroen.
All right, so I'm in Northeast Los Angeles. I have my studio in Eagle Rock. It's between Glendale and Pasadena. I also do outcalls in the area. And my website is Source Energy Therapy. It's hyphenated. You can find it on the website of Blog Talk Radio. My phone number is 323-439-3494. What else can I tell people? My Facebook page is also Source Energy Therapy. My email is my first name, J as in John, EROE, N as in Nancy, the number 7, the number 1 @gmail.com.
Okay. All right. Well, this has been a pleasure. And do keep us posted about Cathy and her book, will you?
Of course. Yes. So thank you so much for having me on your show. Thank you for being the wonderful friend that you are and doing this important work, having the radio show and having people find out about this wonderful material.
Thank you as well. Well, we'll be in touch, and I'll see you on the forum.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, well, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. I think it's been a really interesting show. I really, quite frankly, I don't believe I've heard of any other case that's had so much evidence to back it up. So it was really great to hear about that today. So once again, you can find out more about me and my practice by going to newearthjourney.com. I also have another little radio show every other Tuesday night on BBS Radio, and it's called New Earth Journey. And let's see. I do want to mention that I'm going to be taking the next few Fridays off and spend Christmas with my family. And so we'll be talking to you again then in 2016. And as I leave you all this evening, I'm going to play the beautiful Latita Teresa's flute music again as we close the show. And you can find her music at latitateresa.com. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And good night.